Hi, this is PJ Kennedy, and today we're going to go over a few tips on scrap metal art. First off, the most important tip is make something that you want to make. This is one of my favorite images. It's actually a little motorcycle carburetor, really famous in the dirt bike community. And he's supposed to look a little mean, and he's going to have some flames coming out, and this the top for it will add a little bit on. My biggest tip is, if you're going to copy some art that somebody has already done, utilize the most parts of their art as you can, but in turn making it your own and changing it just enough so that it still resembles the original piece, but it isn't exactly the same. You always want to try to do something that's your own. So let's get started. I'm going to clamp our piece down in our vise, and we're going to ground that out. The ground is for the electricity to run so that the welder can actually create a weld. Now I've done some pre-work, and on our carburetor you'd have a twist-on cap and a throttle cable that goes in. Well, with us we have this gear and a king bolt, washer, and a piece of metal that I don't really know what it is, but it looked like it fit right. This guy sits right on. Kind of line it out, make sure that it sits in the right direction that you want it to go and it's in the right space. Now we're going to get ourselves with our proper PPE, safety glasses, gloves, welding gloves as well. When you're welding, you're burning pretty hot, so you don't want to weld yourself. And our welding helmet, making sure that it's set and turned on. Now when you're welding, the idea of welding and playing with fire can be a little scary. It's not. It's really as simple as pulling the trigger and letting the wire come out, and then just wiggling the gun. The only scary part is getting burnt or touching something that's already been hot. So when you're doing a piece of art, you really need to focus before you weld on where everything is set up and that it's not going to move. It makes it a lot easier if it's set perfect and you're not trying to do those last second adjustments. Secondly, you want to find a good spot to weld. You don't just want to throw a weld everywhere. You want to weld in certain places that you're not going to actually see or that are not really apparent. Sometimes the weld doesn't turn out perfect when you're welding on old rusty metal like that, so if it's a smaller weld or something that's hidden, it's most likely better than a big old blocky ugly weld right in the front of your piece. I've got this nice little spot on the top here that I'm going to tack weld on. And voila, we are now tacked. What we mean by tack welded is that it is held in place by a very small weld, but it is not permanently stuck. If I need to, I can adjust it or move it. I can also break it off if it's really horrendous. I'm going to check it over and over again to make sure that it's right and in the right spot, and then I'm going to locate another spot that I want to weld it that is not going to be completely ugly or in the way. Now when you're welding, it is pretty simple. You just need to get set first where you want it to go. Make sure that the pieces are clamped down, or in this case my hand. Pull the trigger and do little tiny circles with your welder. That one was a little off center. We're going to do another little bit to it on the left to make sure that it's right in the middle of our art. Now that we've got the front welded on and the back tacked, we're going to go on the back and finish welding the piece in place. We'll do one on the left here. Reposition. And do one on the right. And as you're welding, you just aim the wire towards the thicker piece of metal until it is hot and molten, and then move it to the thinner piece. Again, a little bit on this side. This guy is actually made up of an old meat grinder, it was. And that is a cast steel, so it's a molten metal that's poured into a piece of cast or like a molding. It's a good way to form many different shapes. The problem is that it doesn't weld very well, so you have to make sure that you weld it a few times. You don't want to weld too much of it or make it too hot, but you want to weld a little bit on the left and a little bit on the right, and make sure that everywhere that you can weld, you have a small little tack weld on there so that if one of them breaks, you're good for the rest of them to hold. Now that we got our throttle cable assembly top, quote unquote, on there, we're gonna do some flames out the back. Now, I can't really make flames, so what we're going to do is we're going to use old dirt bike chain to make a mock flame. With that, it's pretty easy. It's nice that it doesn't have to actually be in any shape. It can be kind of whatever you want. So with this, it's nice to have something to hold the links down. And what we're going to do is we're going to weld on the inside of the chain. And by the inside of the chain, I mean this area right in here. I don't want to weld on the top because then I can see each weld, and that's a little ugly. If I weld on the in-between in the middle, then you won't be able to see them from the outside. Again, you need to make sure that you're properly grounded. And then it's just a little tack weld. We'll move 2 links over, give it another little tack. We will go all the way through the chain, tacking the links together. I love working with chains, but they can really be a pain in the butt. If one of your tack welds breaks, then the chain will have a broken spot in it and it kind of fliggles around like that. And it's not very good looking. So you got to make sure that you do both sides of it. And that when you weld, you're moving a lot back and forth to the left and the right to make sure that you're getting all the pieces, this link, the right link, and the bottom link all to weld together. Now, if they're welded really well, you can actually use them for handles on hammers and axes and tools of such. People look at you like you're crazy when you do it, but it actually does work. So now that we've got one of these welded, we'll do another one real fast. It's kind of fun with these. You can go in different shapes. They don't have to be perfect as long as you like the way that they look. We'll use our screwdriver to hold the links where we want them as we're welding. And move on to the next one. And you're not welding every link, you're only welding every other link. The chain is made up of inside and outside links. We are only welding the joints on the outside links. Those are the wider ones. Because with that, we can get both the right link, the left link, and the outside link all in one weld. All right, now that we've got all those tacked together, I'm gonna do a little fit of where we want them. I want one of them coming right out the middle, I think. We'll see, do we like it this way? That's pretty cool looking. Check it this way. Oh, I think we're gonna go with that. So then, from there, basically just hold it, point it, and shoot it. Kind of like a camera phone, really. We're using a gasless flux core welder wire. So even though I have this shield on there, we're not really using it. That's why you can see all this slag and dust coming off of our welds. What that means is that when we're conducting electricity through, you need some sort of protection to keep the area where you're welding a clean air, basically a pure air. You don't want any outside chemicals or anything like that. When you're using an outer gas or a gas that's on an actual gas, not a solid gas, what can happen is that it is too big of an area and some of the chemicals and gases and dirt that's in the metal itself will degas, they call it, and it'll come out and it makes your weld not very good. With the wire, with the flux core wire that I'm using, it cuts through a lot of that dirt and grime, and that's actually the reason that I prefer to use that, because I don't want to clean the project before I'm welding it. I'd like to clean it all afterward, all at once. So we use a flux core wire around here. So I'm going to take this other piece, I'm going to put it in a slightly different spot, just to the right. Maybe have it come back a little bit more just so it looks a little different. one side and then tack the other. And as you can see, I'm not ever leaving my hand sturdy in one place. My fingers are always moving, my wrists are always rolling. I'm spreading my weld to both pieces of metal to make the two into one. Do one more here. Now when you're welding a lot on these chains like that, you have to sometimes be careful. Some welders have a smaller duty cycle, they call it, which means you can only weld for so long. This YesWelder 205DS that we're using, the duty cycle is some exorbitantly long number that I haven't found yet. So I don't really have to stop. The only thing limiting me for how long I can weld is myself and how hot I am. Flip it over and do the other side real fast. And again, that's the problem with working with a chain, is that you can't just skip one and save some time, because when you do that, that's the one that tends to be the one that breaks. As you can see, I'm not taking a long time for each weld. I just need to make sure that it's molten and then it fuses together when I'm all done. Put this in here, and I like that they're all kind of a different angle and a different length. I don't want it to all be the same. Get that side tacked in. And get that side tacked in. Voila! With that, we have our fake fire coming out of the back of the carburetor. As you can see, it's not that hard to do a piece of metal art. All it really takes is something to burn, melt the metal together, metal itself, and imagination. First things that you can always do are flowers, things that you like in your everyday life. This is something that the original image I'll eventually get tattooed on myself. So it's something that I have wanted to make for a very long time. I've still got a little bit more to do with it. We'll add some more chain, little throttle cable off the back, and then we'll grind everything down, shape the eyes and the face and make it a little bit more mean, but that all comes in time. And right now we got to get going. You guys all have a good day. We'll see you later.